At Mitchell's Firearms, Brad Mitchell mocks the frail old man asking to see an M1 Garand. "Careful, Gramps, it's heavy," he sneers, drawing laughs from customers. But when the man says 20 years, Vietnam, 2 Purple Hearts, a hush falls. Moments later, the door opens. In walk SEAL team veterans, not for weapons but for Frank Keller. They call him Sir, they salute, and they film everything. They thought he was a relic. What they didn't know, he was the reason some of them came home. Stick around, because when a warrior's honor is mocked, the entire brotherhood shows up to respond. And hey, tell us where you're watching from and what time. Drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Brad Mitchell's fingers drummed impatiently against the glass counter of Mitchell's Firearms, his brass name tag gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Another worthless day dealing with tire kickers and wannabes. When the door chime announced yet another gray-haired visitor, Brad Mitchell's lips curled into a dismissive smirk. These old-timers were always the same. Long on stories, short on cash. "Hey! Hey, Tanner! Watch this!" Brad Mitchell whispered to his stock boy, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "Bet you $10 he asks about some ancient war relic." The elderly man approached the counter with measured steps, his weathered face bearing an expression Brad Mitchell couldn't quite read. Something about the old-timer's bearing made Brad Mitchell's cocky smile falter for just a moment. "I'd like to see the M1 Garand, please," the man said quietly, his voice carrying an unexpected weight. Brad Mitchell's theatrical eye roll drew nervous chuckles from some younger customers, while others shifted uncomfortably. A teenage girl in the corner raised her phone, started recording. "Sure thing, Gramps," Brad Mitchell announced, voice dripping with condescension as he reached for the rifle. "But these aren't toys, you know. Probably too heavy for you anyway." His fingers wrapped carelessly around the historic weapon, swinging it up like a baseball bat. The old man's eyes narrowed, tracking every disrespectful movement. 20 years service, 2 tours in Vietnam, the elderly visitor stated flatly. "I know how to handle an M1 Garand." Brad Mitchell barely registered the words, too busy playing to his audience. He didn't notice the growing number of phones recording his performance. Yeah, everyone's a hero these days." Brad Mitchell scoffed, spinning the rifle dramatically. "Look, unless you're actually buying something." His words trailed off as a sharp voice cut through the shop. "Mr. Keller, is this man giving you trouble?" A tall woman in a business suit stepped forward, her press badge catching the light. "I'm doing a piece on veteran services in our community. Would you mind sharing your experience here today?" Brad Mitchell's stomach lurched as he finally noticed the forest of phones pointed his way. His name tag suddenly felt heavy against his chest like a target. The old man, Mr. Keller, stood straighter, younger somehow, as other customers gathered around him supportively. "Potsam." Type respect if you believe every veteran deserves dignity. Later that evening, alone in his office, Brad Mitchell clutched his brass name tag, polishing it obsessively as he watched the view count climb on the viral video. Vet Respect was trending nationwide, his name attached to every share. His hands shook as he remembered his father's words from years ago. "Son, a man's true character shows in how he treats those who came before him." Would his empire of disrespect survive the next 24 hours? Brad Mitchell's reflection stared back at him from the polished name tag, but he hardly recognized himself anymore. Had he always been this person? And more importantly, who would he become when the dust settled? The security cameras caught his unease as he paced the empty shop floor, the M1 Garand now lying respectfully in its case. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, their candles flickering in the growing darkness. Brad Mitchell's world was about to change, and deep down he knew he deserved whatever came next, whatever came. Brad Mitchell's fingers trembled as he polished his brass name tag for the 5th time that morning, desperately trying to silence the echo of his own mocking voice from the viral video. The shop's security cameras had captured everything. His sneering face, his exaggerated imitation of Frank Keller's slight tremor, the way he'd held the M1 Garand just out of reach. Now, 4 hours later, that moment was everywhere. The familiar pine and oil scent of Carson's gun shop, usually a comfort to Brad Mitchell, seemed to close in around him like an invisible noose. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. Commander Ryan Cole's post had gained 10,000 more shares. The endemic disrespect shown to our veterans isn't just about one viral video. It's about people like Brad Mitchell who've forgotten the price of freedom. Brad Mitchell's throat tightened as he remembered his grandfather's face the day he'd pinned this very name tag on his chest. "Make me proud, son," he'd said, his own Vietnam service medals gleaming on his dress uniform. The same grandfather who'd stopped speaking to him after he'd dropped out of ROTC, claiming it was too much pressure. The shop's door chimed. Brad Mitchell's head snapped up, expecting another angry veteran, but it was just Tommy, his old high school friend who worked at the local VFW. "Hey, Brad Mitchell," Tommy said, his voice uncharacteristically formal. "You see what's happening online? Rafoid for vet shame is trending. They're digging up everything." "Everything?" Brad Mitchell's voice cracked. "Remember last Memorial Day, when you complained about the parade blocking the shop's entrance? Someone found your Facebook post. And that time you told Mrs. Henderson her husband's Purple Heart display was taking up too much counter space. She kept the email." The security camera in the corner blinked its red light accusingly. Brad Mitchell touched his name tag again, remembering how he'd rolled his eyes at Frank Keller's stories about the Tet Offensive. He'd thought the old man was just another bore dragging out ancient history. Now, watching the comments pour in under the viral video, each veteran's story hit like a physical blow. Type "remember" if you've ever witnessed someone disrespecting our veterans, Commander Cole's latest post read. The responses flooded in by the thousands. A scientific study from Veterans Affairs flashed across Brad Mitchell's screen. 73% of Vietnam veterans report experiencing disrespect or dismissal when sharing their experiences. The statistic burned into his vision alongside memories of every smirk, every sigh, every moment he'd failed to listen. His grandfather's words from years ago surfaced. "Respect isn't just about words, boy. It's about understanding the weight of what others have carried." Brad Mitchell had laughed it off then. Now, as the vet shame climbed Twitter's trending list, that weight settled squarely on his shoulders. The name tag caught the fluorescent light reflecting his grandfather's disappointment back at him. Brad Mitchell remembered the day he'd quit ROTC, how he'd claimed it was about the early mornings, the strict rules. But in truth, he'd been afraid. Afraid of not measuring up, afraid of the responsibility. Easier to mock than to understand. Easier to dismiss than to honor. "They're organizing a veterans rally outside the shop tomorrow," Tommy said quietly. "Every VFW post in the county. They're calling it the Respect March." Brad Mitchell's phone buzzed again. A news alert: local gun shop employees' mockery exposes deeper pattern of veteran disrespect. Special report at 6. The walls of Carson's gun shop, lined with the very weapons these veterans had once carried in service, seemed to close in further. Brad Mitchell's carefully constructed world of casual dismissal and easy arrogance was crumbling, exposed by a single moment of cruelty caught on camera. Have you ever watched your world unravel thread by thread, knowing you held the scissors all along? Brad Mitchell's hands trembled as he polished the display case, his movements mechanical and desperate, trying to ignore the growing crowd outside his shop. The veterans had been arriving in waves since morning, not with anger, but with something far worse: disappointment. Each time the bell above the door chimed, Brad Mitchell's stomach twisted into a tighter knot. Through the glass, he watched another group approach, their bearing unmistakable. Navy SEALs. His throat went dry. The name tag on his chest, once worn with casual indifference, now felt like a lead weight. Brad Mitchell, owner, had become a mark of shame across social media, with Frank Mitchell mockery trending nationwide. "Permission to enter, sir." The SEAL's voice carried no malice, making it somehow worse. Brad Mitchell nodded, unable to meet their eyes. The security camera in the corner blinked its red light, the same camera that had captured his sneering face just hours ago when he'd dismissed Frank Keller's simple request to hold the M1 Garand. "That rifle there," one SEAL pointed to the Garand, "saved my instructor's life in '68. He learned to shoot on one just like Mr. Keller carried." Brad Mitchell's fingers instinctively touched his name tag, as if trying to hide it. The stories began flowing, tales of valor, sacrifice, and the brotherhood of arms, each word hammered at his carefully constructed wall of superiority. "Mr. Keller's unit," another SEAL said softly. "They held the line at Dong Ha, saved over 300 civilians. Did you know that Mr. Mitchell—" The security camera caught the moment perfectly, Brad Mitchell's hand covering his mouth, tears breaking through his facade. Within minutes, this footage too would join the viral storm. His phone buzzed constantly now. Local news wanted statements. Former customers were canceling orders. His supplier in Texas had just texted, "We need to talk about our relationship." The weight of consequence pressed down like a physical force. "Have you ever wondered, Mr. Mitchell," the eldest SEAL asked, "why some men speak so little of their greatest moments?" Brad Mitchell could only shake his head, watching his reflection in the display case, seeing himself truly for the first time. A small group of veterans had gathered outside, some wearing their old unit patches. Among them, Brad Mitchell spotted Frank Keller's distinctive silver hair. The old warrior stood tall, speaking quietly to the others, showing the same dignity that Brad Mitchell had mocked mere hours ago. The bell chimed again. More veterans entered, not to condemn, but to share. Each story they told stripped away another layer of Brad Mitchell's ignorance, revealing the hollow core of his arrogance. The security camera captured it all: his slumped shoulders, his reddened eyes, the trembling hands that kept touching his name tag as if it burned. "Sakomais." Type "respect earned" if you've ever learned a hard lesson about judgment. "Your name's going to mean something different after today," one of the SEALs said as they prepared to leave. "Question is, what will you make it mean?" Brad Mitchell stood alone in his shop, surrounded by weapons he'd sold with pride, but never truly understood. Outside, the crowd had grown their quiet presence more powerful than any protest could have been. His phone lit up with another notification. Mitchell must learn was now trending higher than Mitchell mockery. The security footage of his tears had gone viral, but instead of satisfaction, the comments spoke of hope for change. Brad Mitchell touched his name tag one last time, finally understanding the weight of not just a name, but the responsibility it carried. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through his shop window, highlighting the M1 Garand that had started it all. In its reflection, Brad Mitchell saw not just his own face, but the faces of countless veterans he'd failed to honor. The unseen consequences of his actions weren't just about business or reputation. They were about the very soul of respect itself. Using the full name Brad Mitchell consistently throughout this section, Brad Mitchell's hands trembled as he stared at the name tag he'd carelessly worn for 3 years at Mitchell's gun supply. The polishing cloth moved in slow circles, each stroke revealing not just brass, but burning shame. The security footage from yesterday played on repeat in his mind. His sneering face, his mocking tone, the way he'd dismissed Frank Keller's trembling hands reaching for that M1 Garand. "Look at this," Brad Mitchell whispered, watching another veteran's testimony go viral. Gun shop shame had reached 100,000 shares. His phone buzzed constantly with notifications from the community Facebook group where veterans shared their own stories of disrespect. Each ping felt like another nail in his professional coffin. The morning sun cast long shadows through the shop windows, illuminating the fresh flowers local residents had begun leaving at the entrance. Brad Mitchell approached them slowly, reading the notes attached. For all who served, thank you for your sacrifice. His throat tightened as he recognized names of regular customers, men whose service stories he'd never bothered to ask about. I need to do this right. Brad Mitchell muttered, hands steady now, as he picked up his phone. The live stream button on the shop's social media page had never felt so heavy. But the community deserved to see this. My name is Brad Mitchell. He began, voice cracking slightly. Yesterday I failed not just Mr. Keller, but every veteran who's ever walked through these doors. Today that changes. He propped his phone up, letting the camera capture him as he moved through the shop, removing every no loitering sign that had discouraged veterans from sharing their stories. The security camera whirred quietly as Brad Mitchell installed a new sign. Veterans First, free cleaning services for all who served. His hands worked methodically, measuring twice before drilling each hole. The sound echoed through the empty shop like a hammer striking truth. Heartwarming. Type respect. If you believe every veteran deserves better than what I showed yesterday, Brad Mitchell said to the live stream audience watching the comments flood in. Each message struck deeper than the last. An elderly man appeared at the door, another Vietnam veteran judging by his cap. Brad Mitchell's newly polished name tag caught the light as he straightened up, walked over, and for the first time in his career asked, "Sir, would you share your story with me?" The security camera recorded everything the veteran's surprise, the way Brad Mitchell pulled up a chair, the reverent handling of another M1 Garand. But most importantly, it captured the moment Brad Mitchell truly began to listen. The transformation had begun one story at a time. Brad Mitchell stands frozen behind the counter of Mitchell's Firearms, his grandfather's brass name tag feeling heavier than ever on his chest. The morning sun streams through the shop windows, catching the polished surface of the M1 Garand he spent all night cleaning, each stroke of the cloth a meditation on his shame. The bell above the door chimes, and Frank Keller's silhouette appears. Brad Mitchell's heart pounds against his ribs, the arrogance of yesterday replaced by a humility that burns in his throat. His social media notifications had exploded overnight. Wahard gunshop shame, still trending his mockery of a Vietnam veteran playing on screens across America. But now something deeper than viral infamy gnaws at his core. Mr. Keller, Sorong. Brad Mitchell manages his voice barely above a whisper. The name tag, passed down through 3 generations of Mitchell men, catches the light. His grandfather, a World War II veteran himself, would have been disgusted by yesterday's display. The thought makes Brad Mitchell's fingers tremble as they trace the worn edges of the name tag. I spent the night reading about the M1 Garand in Vietnam. Brad Mitchell continues, forcing himself to meet Frank Keller's steady gaze. About what you and your brothers carried through those jungles. I didn't understand. His voice cracks on the last word, and the security camera whirs softly overhead. The same one that captured his sneering face yesterday, now witnessing something entirely different. Frank Keller approaches the counter, and Brad Mitchell gently lifts the freshly cleaned M1 Garand. Sir, would you share your story not for the cameras this time, not for social media, just for understanding? What follows is a 3-hour conversation that transforms Brad Mitchell's world forever. As Frank Keller's quiet voice fills the empty shop with tales of courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood, Brad Mitchell feels his former identity crumbling away. Each word strips another layer of ignorance, revealing the profound truth he'd missed while hiding behind his counter, and his prejudices that every weapon in his shop carries the weight of history, and every veteran who walks through his door carries the weight of our freedom. Type respect. If you believe some lessons change us forever, appears briefly as Brad Mitchell removes his grandfather's name tag, polishing it one last time before placing it in a shadow box alongside a photograph of Frank Keller holding the M1 Garand. The caption reads, "In honor of those who carried these weapons for our freedom." The security footage from that morning never makes it to social media. Brad Mitchell keeps it private, understanding, finally, that true redemption doesn't need an audience. He transforms his shop into a sanctuary of respect, where veterans' stories are honored, not mocked, and where his grandfather's name tag serves as a constant reminder that sometimes our greatest moments come from facing our deepest shame. Share this story if you believe in the power of redemption appears as Brad Mitchell closes his shop that evening, the M1 Garand displayed prominently in a new case dedicated to veteran stories. The sign above it reads, "Every weapon has a hero's story." In the quiet of his shop, Brad Mitchell realizes that sometimes the most powerful truth isn't found in viral moments or trending hashtags, but in the humble recognition of our own ignorance and the quiet courage to change. His transformation, sparked by shame, but completed through understanding, becomes not just a personal victory, but a testament to the power of respect, remembrance, and the profound impact of listening to those who carried our freedom on their shoulders.